Welcome back to The Narrative. I'm your storyteller, Callistra Farrier. Well, Grenada has been abuzz with the sacking of former Minister of Sports, Senator Jonathan Lacrette. Last week, Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell called him into cabinet and told him his services were no longer needed. That has sparked questions about the manner in which the Prime Minister went about dismissing Mr. Lacrette. In the cabinet, the Prime Minister, of course, is first among equals, and it's being said that he's well within his rights, and he is, to fire a minister. But the process and the manner in which it has been done and the reasons for the turn of events are being questioned. Lacrette said to be at the middle of a controversy involving the Grenadian National Lottery Authority. The former minister, was concerned about what he felt were corrupt practices within the statutory body and felt that action was not being taken to remedy it, and there are a number of other issues which are coming out at this time following the sacking of Mr. Lacrette. Now, Mr. Lacrette has not spoken publicly on the matter, so we have not heard his side of the story, but in a news conference last week Thursday, Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell said he has lost trust and confidence in Mr. Lacrette, effectively burning the bridges and throwing him under the bus and under the bridge and under about 1,000 pounds of dynamite. The question is whether or not the Prime Minister's public pronouncements of a loss of trust and confidence in Lacrette closes the circle of him ever re-entering any cabinet of a Deacon Mitchell-led cabinet. Now, joining me on the narrative at this time is Michael Baptiste. He's a former member of cabinet in Grenada, a former parliamentarian, and he knows a thing or two about cabinets and parliaments and governments. He's here to talk to us about how this has all unfolded and whether or not the Prime Minister acted properly in having, for instance, a police waiting to escort Mr. Lacrette out of government headquarters. Now, in the news conference, the Prime Minister said he has no idea about any police escort, police removing Mr. Lacrette from the building. However, our information is that a senior police officer was present and walked behind Mr. Lacrette as he exited the building. Welcome to the program, Michael Baptiste. Let's talk about this situation.
Pleasant morning to you and all the wonderful listeners out there. I hope everybody's having a wonderful time this carnival season. It is so rather unfortunate at a time when we are trying to rebuild from the devastation of Hurricane Beryl, at a time when thousands of Grenadians in St. Patrick's East and West and St. Andrews and Carrick to Martinique are living in shelters with no roof over their heads and are looking towards this government as a beacon of hope to assist them in getting back to their homes. We hear once again about this infighting in the government. First, let me say that our Prime Minister should understand that Grenada is a constitutional democracy and not a monarchy. And the people of Grenada are not his subjects. And whether he knows it or not, he is a servant of the people. And I say so going back to the behavior of this Prime Minister. You may recall that the Prime Minister was relatively unknown. He came to the Grenadian people. He sold them a team. He said this was a group of young, educated, trustworthy people ready to take over the mantle of the governorship of state. A few months later, he came back before the Grenadian people with Ron Redhead. And he told the people that Ron Redhead, who was hailed as the youth leader of change, was not educated enough to be a minister. And he, as the Prime Minister, is requesting that Ron Redhead go back to school and that we, the taxpayer, should send Redhead back to school at $14,000 to $20,000 a month. Then we heard the PM in called a press conference and called on his supporters in the trade centers and the youth center, and he said he had a cabinet conclusion where it was concluded that monies that were earmarked for the consolidated fund found its way in a constituency office, and he offered legal advice, and he said that offering, telling whoever to return the monies. And then we faced now with Mr. Lacrette. Senator Lacrette was not just an ordinary member of his team that was given a award. Here is a man who had invited the Holy Spirit to be present in the campaign and to help in anointing this Prime Minister. Now, if the Prime Minister has lost confidence in Mr. Lacrette, the decent way to do it was to call in Mr. Lacrette in his office and, of course, advise him of the reasons why he has lost confidence in him. And if the Prime Minister is talking about professionalism, Prime Minister, you should have offered him the opportunity to resign. Instead, the Prime Minister went on the rampage before his colleagues. He told him then that he's untrustworthy and has lost confidence in him. And then he went on to meet the press. And in his true arrogant manner, dismissing and insulting again intelligence of the Grenadian people. The people have a right to know what was the reason why you lost trust in him. He was the Minister of Health. Is it because he's incompetent? And you said you lost trust and confidence. Is it you found some irregularities in his behavior that warrants that? Now, had the Prime Minister done it the professional way, the ball would have been in Mr. Lacrette's court to tell the nation why he tendered his resignation. A simple asking to resign, accept the resignation, and that's the end of it. But if the Prime Minister go into specifics and he use the word trust, I think the Grenadian people have all right to know
to know what has caused this whole storm that is taking place, because the Prime Minister, as you said, he made it very loud, both in the manner he did on the Wednesday when he fired Mr. Lacrette, and on the Thursday when he had a news conference, but then failing similarly as he did when he said, you know, that famous saying of his now, I have nothing to say to them. Whether or not one liked the question that was asked by the reporter, whether people felt it was time to let the Barbados cricket trip go because we were dealing with a hurricane. But do you believe that that answer, that response that he gave a few weeks ago when asked about going to Barbados right almost on the eve of an impending dangerous storm is a sort of an indication of how the Prime Minister is governing and how he views the people of the nation?
Again, the Prime Minister is demonstrating too much arrogance. Now, at a time when a Hurricane 4 Beryl is approaching Grenada, he found his way in the cricket. And as he's behaving like a monarch, like King Charles, he's saying to the Grenadian people, I don't need to explain to you what it is. I'm sorry, Mr. Prime Minister. No one called you for that position. You asked for the job. You didn't ask for the job to be a king of Grenada. You asked for the job to be a servant of the people. And if hurricane all over the region, Barbados and Vincent, everyone hunkered down, giving instructions to the citizens as to what they should do, making homeless shelters available, putting all the systems in place. Our Prime Minister went to Barbados. And what was strange enough, the Prime Minister saw nothing.
But it is my understanding that, Mr. Baptiste, it is my understanding that other leaders were also at the cricket. Obviously, the hurricane was going to hit Grenada and Barbados first if it hit anybody. But other leaders, I am told, reliably so, were also at the cricket event there. So he was not alone, but my question is not him not going to the cricket, which is in the, there are two sides to two thought processes about him not being here in that period, but the way he handled being questioned about it afterwards is what I'm
No,
hoping to,
there's a problem in going to the cricket. The Prime Minister is also the minister responsible for natural disaster. And you will recall on that day, there were several announcements that he would be making some remarks as about the hurricane and about 3 or 4 postponements of his appearance. It was not until late the night that he started making, and it was on a weekend. It was a lapse in judgment because number one, at a time when we have to declare a state of emergency, you did not give the single woman head of household, the people who don't know where the next meal is coming from and do not have the resources to stock up on food for 7 days. You did not give them the opportunity to call a relative to ask for assistance. You did not ask MoneyGram or Western Union to please remain open late so that these folks who don't have the resources, because you see, when you live above the people, you tend to have the tendency not to be able to invite yourself into the feelings of ordinary people. So the Prime Minister does not know that there are lots and lots of people in Grenada not knowing where the next meal coming from. And they are not in a position to store food for 7 days. And the hurry up notice that this Prime Minister came in at the last minute with the state of emergency and his declarations and all of that. The little man who have to scant for his meal, he did not have adequate time for that. So yes, going to the cricket was a mistake. He should have been at home. And not only he going to the cricket, during Hurricane Ivan, I could remember setting up a radio station in my home and calling out the then former Prime Minister, asking him to come off the boat where he was and come by my home for some refreshments because, of course, I had electricity. I stored my electricity. But what is interesting is that a lot of them attacking the former Prime Minister for being on the boat, but the boat was in Grenadian waters. The Prime Minister was at home in Grenadian waters. About 7 or 8 of the ministers were out. And you heard the thing that so it was so outrageous that the Prime Minister took a helicopter and went to Carriacou, the island that was devastated, and he could not find the representative there. And no one asked him, or he couldn't say why. You are going to Petit Martinique and Carriacou, the minister lives in Carriacou, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And no one asked him, why you journey there on helicopter and you went there, devastation, and you could not find the minister. Where was the minister? The minister, I know, was in New York Friday before the hurricane. I think he hurried back to Grenada and probably made it back in time.
But Mr. Batiste, bringing us back to the Lacrette situation is, there's some who feel like this is 2012. There's reminders of 2012 all over again. That there might be disturbance within this administration. What's your take on that?
Well, the National Democratic Congress is known for infighting. As a matter of fact, the party was born out of infighting and confusion. In 1987, in Delhi, they broke away and formed NDC. In 1990, they got into government. 1991, they started fighting. It was in the wilderness for a long time. They came back in 2008. 2009, they started fighting and among each other. And now we have the same thing that's happening. It is a hallmark of the National Democratic Congress that when trust is placed in their custody, they disappoint. This is not a time to be fighting. In 2008, in the height of the recession, when they should have been dealing with the problems with the global recession and the recession at home. They started fighting. Now, in the midst of a disaster, at a time when people are living with tarpaulins in homeless shelters, can't send their children to school, in St. Patrick's East and West, in St. Andrews and Carriacou and Petit Martinique. That is what we're hearing from a government who sold themselves as a united, well-educated group that's ready to move Grenada forward. I think the Prime Minister have a lot more explaining to do. Prime Minister have to understand that he's a servant of the people and he should start behaving as a servant and not the master.
Let's take a break here and be right back. I'm on there with Michael Baptiste. We're taking a look at the firing of Jonathan Lacrette from the Cabinet of Ministers of Grenada and also his removal from the Parliament, from the upper house as a senator. His appointment to the Prime Minister advising the Governor General to revoke his appointment last week, Wednesday. More when we come back.